The Age of Uncertainty podcast by Nigel Baker. Product owner, servant leader.
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Age of Uncertainty podcast. This one is about product owner, servant leader. So, this episode is all based around a challenge I received a couple of years ago. It was the Scrum gathering in London. Not the 2011 one, which I chaired, but the 2018 one. I was asked to submit some sessions for that gathering, but with a bit of a product owner twist. Classically at these Agile conferences, coaching, Scrum Mastery, development, testing have all been great focuses. Alas, the business side has not, and so product ownership has always been a little bit weak. So I think at the London gathering, they were really looking to try and max up or maximise the value of that particular product owner stream. Now, you know me, I haven't written any books on product ownership. I am not some product management guru, but I do really enjoy the subject and I have done the job. And so what I thought was, what can I bring to this game that is different from everyone else? So I thought, do you know what? I'm going to draw on my coaching background a bit here. And I thought, let's bring the coaching conversation to this world of product ownership. Now, if you think about product ownership, how it classically used to be in Scrum, it very much was a big, fat cat. That traditional business person, very powerful, very IT ignorant, not exactly your friend in the business, someone saying, I need it all and I need it all now. That business power, that business skill, they brought those to the table, just not necessarily in a lovely soft package. And so as a Scrum Master in those old school Scrum deliveries, you really used to have to spend a large part of your job sort of nurturing, supporting, sort of being the Jiminy Cricket on the shoulder of the product owner's Pinocchio, being a bit of their conscience, helping them through the experience. However, that's not many people's experience. You know as well as I do that one of the most common product owner patterns is just renaming business analysts, calling them product owners, and sticking them in Scrum to write all the user stories. Stress, strain, massive load, massive pressure, story, write more stories, write the requirements, giving them all the responsibilities of product ownership, but none of the actual power to do the job. Ugh, that's just vile. And so, for me, I've always... the fat cat model isn't great, but I far prefer that over that poor old business analyst being squeezed slowly to death. So what's that got to do with this session? Well, my hypothesis that I wanted to test was, could we bring some of that Scrum Master, not the Scrum Master role, but that Scrum Master style to the world of product ownership? Could we help grow our product owners and then make them more emotionally intelligent, make them more emotionally capable than perhaps we've classically seen them as, bring that EQ to the skill and the role of product owner? That was the idea. Now, how could we do that? Well, I looked into one particular area that we use in Scrum Mastery quite a lot, servant leadership, from Robert Greenleaf. Servant leadership was coined by Robert K. Greenleaf. He worked for AT&T as their Director of Management Sciences and retired in the late 60s after 38 years working there. Now, most of us, after we retire, we like to go and play a bit of golf, maybe do a bit of the gardening, but not for Greenleaf. He said he was going to take on his second life, and he published a famous paper, The Servant as Leader, in 1970. So the idea of servant leadership, the servant as leader, is, and I quote, as follows. The servant leader is servant first. It begins with the natural feeling that one wants to serve first. Then conscious choice brings one to aspire to lead. That person is sharply different from one who is leader first. The difference manifests itself in the care taken by the servant first to make sure that other people's highest priority needs are being served. So if you see this picture here, the idea of the servant leader is I enable you, you don't enable me. So Larry Spears was the CEO of the Greenleaf Centre after the passing of Robert Greenleaf, and he has done a wealth of work, taking Greenleaf's work, taking unpublished work, sharing that with the wider world, and expanding on Greenleaf's ideas. he came up with this 10 characteristics of servant leadership. The first and most important for me characteristic of a servant leader is empathy. Really caring. A servant leader product owner has the ability to recognize and understand feelings and emotions that are experienced by their stakeholders, customers, developers and users. A product owner such as this will care for their communities and will deeply experience their emotions. This deep connection will mean their actions are motivated by a genuine desire to help. That's why a servant leader product owner is not mercenary and not exploitative, but is really interested in solving the problems of real people. Listening. A servant leader product owner has the ability to really listen and understand their customer and users' problems and situations. A servant leader product owner has the ability to pay complete attention to others and really hear what they're saying. This coaching skill allows the servant leader product owner to gain a deep understanding of their customers and also creates a deep connection with Scrum teams. Remember what Stephen Covey said? Most people do not listen with intent to understand, they listen with the intent to reply. Or, as the Dalai Lama said, when you talk, you are only repeating what you already know. But if you listen, you may find out something new. So let's move on to the next characteristic, healing. Followers typically desire leaders who care for the whole of them, who care for their spiritual, physical and mental holistic needs. So a good servant leader product owner cares for that general health of their users, their customers, and especially their development teams. So in terms of healing, classically, I would say that's sustainable pace, the Agile Manifesto principle. Agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. Note the key word there, sponsors and users. It's not just about the development team going at a reasonable pace. It's the business and the user of the product being able to go at a reasonable pace as well. I am forever annoyed with apps on my iPhone that update just a little bit too frequently. They update just a little bit too much, really getting on my nerves. I just want to go check the train times. I don't want to have to update the app again. Sustainable pace for sponsors, development team and users. Good servant leaders also understand they need to be self-aware. They need to be able to look in the mirror and see and know who they truly are. Only by having that self-awareness can they avoid those dangerous blind spots that could lead them or their product or their customers or their stakeholders into very dangerous directions. A servant leader product owner has the self-awareness of their strengths and weaknesses, flaws and feelings. And this allows them to understand their own personal biases and beliefs when talking to their customers and set them aside when making decisions about the direction of the product. You see, servant leader product owners are coachable. Look what Michael Jordan said, and he's quite famous at the moment, isn't he, with his Netflix show? My best skill was that I was coachable. I was a sponge and aggressive to learn. Okay, persuasion. Now this is interesting. We've got an interesting combination here. If we put together things like your ability to listen, your ability to care and show empathy, your ability to heal, you start wrapping this stuff all together, you can create quite a persuasive individual in that servant leader product owner. Persuasion is a critical skill in the complex and difficult area of product management, where you're trying to explain and persuade your stakeholders, your community, your customers, your users, your development teams, your business, your infrastructure, trying to persuade them to your point of view and your way of working. Now, if you look here in terms of 3 different ways that Greenleaf talks around power, he talks about coercive power, manipulative power, and power as persuasion. So coercive power is the fat cat. I am your boss and you will do as I say or you're fired. But that's a very old school way of using power, isn't it? I see far more these days. Manipulative power, the one ring. Ooh, if you do that for me, I think there are promotions coming. Oh, well, I'm not going to threaten. I'll just say we have redundancies coming in this team. And so we really need to only have people here who really give us 110%. manipulative power? How evil? How dark? Well, I would adopt the third model, persuasion as power. And I've seen many people speak about this, saying, how about, I saw I can't remember who it was at the moment, but she said, look, the reason why I use persuasion as power, the reason why I believe in that model is not because I'm some sort of hippie, it's just because coercive power and manipulative power don't work. You know, you can't just you know what it's like in organisations. You could be the biggest fat cat of them all and tell people what to do. If they don't buy into it, if they don't believe in it, they will find some way for that work not to happen. Right? And you won't be able to catch them at it, they're too clever, but they'll find some way for it not to happen. And that manipulative model, a bit of carrot, a bit of stick, well, how much carrot and stick have you got? You know, you haven't got an infinite supply of carrots, of bribes, and if you try and use the stick, and a lot of leaders use far too much of the stick, people will just leave. People will just move on, leave your team, leave your company, leave your country to avoid that type of model. It has no long-term strategy. It bites you in the end. He who lives by the sword dies by the sword. And so coercive doesn't work, manipulative doesn't work. You have to be able to explain. Whether you're the biggest boss on earth or the most junior product owner on earth, you need to be able to explain why we're doing this, and that will bring people along with you. Conceptualization. I see the future and it will be. Can I conceptualize the future? What does the future look like? A servant leader product owner has the ability to envision the future, or better, the many possibilities of the future. This does not mean they are dreamers. The ability to imagine these opportunities comes aligned with practical reality. There needs to be some way to conceptualize the journey in between this old world and the new. I find it so interesting. Can you conceptualize the problem? The unmet need? Can you conceptualize a vision of the future? Can you conceptualize the journey, the mission you need to go on? Can you conceptualize the answer? Or, as you know in complex work, the many possible answers? In fact, can you conceptualize the many possible futures? I see the future and it will be. I see the futures and they may be. That's a really difficult space to work in as a product owner, but so powerful. It's not just about what does the solution look like. That's the least important thing. It's about that answering of what problem we're trying to solve, how are we solving it, how are we going on that journey, where's that journey taking us, what's the unmet need, what does the future look like, what do the futures look like. Wow. Foresight. Now, the idea of foresight is can I learn from the past to see the future? That's basically being scrummy. You know, servant leader product owners are empirical. They understand the lessons of the past, the reality of the present, and the possible consequences of the future. They plan ahead based on the reality they inhabit. Inspect and adapt, aka empiricism, aka scrum. But there's a huge caring aspect. It's not just about healing and caring at the start. There's also a need for stewardship. I am the product owner. I am the servant leader. I need to care for this product. I need to make sure it's appropriate, not just for now, but for the future. I need to grow this plant appropriately. Now, I'm growing it for everyone involved, for all the stakeholders, the communities, the users. Hell, I'm growing it for the development teams themselves. I'm like a gardener planting trees for the next generation. And in fact, if you want to expand on that, I'm also helping people grow. So when stewardship doesn't just mean the stewardship of the product, growing the product, I need to help my development team grow as well. I am part of them. That Scrum team includes me. Any Agile team includes me. I need to make sure they feel they are growing appropriately. Help my people grow. But who are my people? Well, I'll tell you now, it is the development team, but it's not just the development team. It is that community group, that stakeholder group. It is those customers, those sponsors, those people in the business, those people outside our business, those people who don't know our business exists. Those are the people I am trying to nurture and support and help grow as well, not just my dev team, though I mustn't forget that dev team. Community builder. Now, I find this one fascinating. A great product owner builds communities. Again, not just internally, not just development side, not even just business side, but build communities with their customers. They understand it's the business model they own, not just the product owner. It's the entire ecosystem. The best example I've got for this is this little chap here. This little chap here was painted for me by my best man at my wedding. He collects these to this day. He's in his 40s. We used to collect these as teenagers together 20, 30 odd years ago. It's from Games Workshop, one of their Citadel miniatures. Now, Games Workshop, what do they sell? Well, classically, people would sell other games companies. They sell board games, or they sell metal, or now I think it's plastic miniatures. But in my day, it was little lead figures. They sell little lead figures for you to paint. No, they don't. The thing about Games Workshop, the things about Warhammer 40,000 back in the day, was they're selling you an entire community, an entire ecosystem, a storyline, a future, a series of books, a series of mythology, a series of continuity. They sell you the paints, they sell you the technology, they sell you the ability to paint this, and they sell you the community. They would have magazines and websites these days getting you involved in the hobby, as they would call it, wrapping you around. It's not just selling you a little toy soldier, it's selling you the entire experience around that universe they live in, breathe in, and play their games in. That's a great example for me of community builder. Could they do it better? That's not this video, but most definitely. But it's also something we should understand in terms of our world. We're not here just trying to build products. We're trying to build communities around our products. So those are the 10. I can't remember all the details. You notice I had to read a few of them off the slides, but those are the 10 things that Larry Spears said for him were really important characteristics. But there were some other people who went a little bit deeper. So I found quite interesting this gentleman here, Joe Iarocci, I believe it's pronounced, though I apologise, Joe, if I got it wrong.
Joe Iarocci.
After Spears' work in the Greenie Centre, and he brought up some very similar points in his here. You can see his 3 key priorities, his 3 key principles, and his 3 key practices. But one of those I wanted to pull out that's worded slightly differently to what we saw in Spears' work is connecting followers to a mission. That conceptualization, that journey, that bridge we're going across, I feel that's an interesting aspect and not a lot of us as product owners think about. We think about the problem, we think about the solution, but we don't think about the journey. And I don't mean journey as in terms of the project that the people organise on the team. What I mean is about what quest are we going on? How do I bring everyone with me on this journey of change? Talking about change, Kent Keith, another big name in the industry, came up with the idea of changing the pyramid. He's the man who speaks here about that fundamental turning the pyramid idea of going from being the big leader supported by the teams to being a servant leader who enables others. I think it's really important to understand that's an aspect of organisational change, and it makes product owners agents of change. Now, I know we've always classically called the Scrum Masters change agents, but product owners are as well. Not just in organisational change, though that will happen, but they are changing the business, the market, their user bases and their customers by adding new disruptive products to those markets. They're changing the world by taking those products out there. They mustn't lose sight of that as product owners. You are transforming the world of work. It may just not be your world of work. It may be other people's worlds of work as well. You are a change agent. And I think not enough Scrum Masters know about change agency, let alone product owners. So here we've got from my bookshelf, Don Frick and James Sipe, The 7 Pillars of Servant Leadership. Again, many similar points like made by Larry Spears and Joe, but what I wanted to bring up from here was, well, system thinkers is really fascinating, and I would love to do a future video on system thinking. You know, the understanding that the universe is a very complex place that can't simply be reduced down to sort of an algorithmic cuckoo clock style model, but in fact has very different weird ambiguities and connections with each other. Understand that glorious mess that is the universe. I do like system thinking, but the reason I mention these guys here, it's about exercise moral authority. A person of character. You know, I said it again and again in every video. These are the guys I got the C.S. Lewis quote. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. A good leader offers a good moral core, offers moral authority, and is a person of character. They have substance and weight that you believe in. They've lived a meaningful life. They've lived a life that reflects what they say. Not a mercenary, not exploitative, and 100% not a hypocrite. So if we look around me here, these are all very interesting attributes that you can have as a Scrum Master, but more importantly as a product owner. If I had to pick some out that I preferred myself, I think the conceptualization one's fascinating. Being persuasive is crucial. Community building is critical. Also living a moral life, showing the right behavior in the right way. And when I say moral life, I don't mean being perfect. None of us are perfect. Look at me. Fat, loud mouth. God, I'm the worst example, but I try my best. I try to live in the right way. I try to do the right thing. And that's what we mean by a person of character. It doesn't mean being wonderful. It means just trying hard. Living that substantial life. What would you pick from here? I know a lot of people really focus on the empathy and the listening. What about the change agency aspect? System thinking? Letting people grow, stewardship. These are all fascinating, aren't they? But my concerns with this model is it could just be an excuse to have bad Scrum Masters again. One of the big issues in industry today is basically dodgy Scrum Masters and then product owners sort of stretching their role to try and fill that Scrum Master side of the conversation, diluting down their own job or doing two jobs instead of one. We don't want that. I don't want you to become the coach of the Scrum team. I just want you to use that emotional intelligence for good and not evil, and use that to expand far beyond the Scrum team. So to wrap it all up, servant leader product ownership requires SLPO. So what would I do first? Well, first I would do the product side. I would conceptualize. Then I'll move on to the O and look for stewardship. Then I'll bring in the servant side, the healing, the awareness, the listening, the empathy, and the helping people grow. And then finally, I would move into the leadership side. Once I have served, then I can lead. And what do I mean by that? Community builder, changing the pyramid, system thinking, person of character, exercise that moral authority, connect followers to a mission and bring some foresight. And once I've done all that, I will iterate straight back to the P again and go back to the conceptualization and revisit that. Because after getting that servant stuff in place, you'll realize your product's going to change. SLPO. So, in conclusion, by bringing that emotionally intelligent side of servant leadership into the product owner space, I believe we can grow and catalyze incredibly powerful product people who can really transform the world of work. Those people, those emotionally intelligent people, those business connected, socially connected, caring human beings can then exploit a variety of powerful techniques out there, like Lean Startup, Business Model Canvas, all the Alex Osvaldo work, or customer development, wherever you want to go in terms of product ownership. But those tools can be embraced by getting the right heart in here. The first product you must own, I guess, is your own, yourself, your heart. Once you've done that, from that, everything else can follow. So that's this video done. I hope it's useful. You notice I've just scraped the surface of a lot of conversations here. Once you start turning that servant leader lens onto product ownership, it really opens up some deep ideas and some deep thoughts that in a podcast video off the top of my head, I really haven't covered. If there's anything you would like me to go into in more detail or any aspect you would like me to discuss further, give me a shout in the comments or drop me an email. I would love you to do so. Please, as always, share this stuff on social media. The more viewers, the better in terms of this stuff. Just help get this message out there, bringing EQ to the PO world. Thank you for joining me. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have also. I'll see you in the next special podcast. Take care. I'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Next episode, centralized versus decentralized agile coaching.